Hi everyone, I'm back. I want to start this video by apologizing for not being around this last little while. Honestly, I've just been very busy with work, and I have a 13-month-old baby who keeps me even busier. That being said, I want to say that, first of all, this part of the video, if you're watching it, it means you're seeing this video early on. I'm going to be cutting this part out, this little apology part slash just an update on the channel. We'll be cutting this out, and then so if you're not seeing this, you wouldn't even know. But anyways, just kind of want to talk about the channel a bit. I'm still really want to keep doing stuff here, even though it's been a while since my last video went out. And for those part of my open mic project, after I finish this short series, I'm going to be jumping back into that, and we're going to be finishing that app up. It's just, been hard to find the time recently. So thanks for being here. Thanks especially for those watching this, because it means you're watching it within the first probably week before I cut out that part, this part. And we're going to get into this video now. So, welcome. I want to talk about Flutter Web. It's a passionate topic for me. It's a very mixed feelings. There's things I love about Flutter Web. There's things I don't like about it as much, but it is getting better. And this topic today specifically is about deploying your Flutter Web application. Now, that can seem like a simple thing, and honestly, it can be simple. If you want to do it in a simple way, you can simply just do a build and deploy to Firebase hosting, and you're good. However, there's many caveats with that, things I've learned along the way, and specifically, which I'm going to pull up now, an article that I dug into recently that maybe some of you have seen. Let me just get it up here. Found it on Reddit, and it's a Flutter Web strategy for app updates. And it kind of walked me through an interesting way of thinking about how to deal with specifically cache. Cache is our best friend as a web developer, a software developer, but can also be a real pain in the butt. The reason for that is you might, fix a bug, right? And you deploy it and you're like, great, we fixed it. And new people coming, they're not even going to see that bug, but people that maybe have it cached in their browser, the older version, will still have that bug. And, it's a, it's a lot of effort to tell everyone, every single one of your users to, hey, just clear your cache, it'll be fine, or do like a hard refresh. This is a good solution for that, that I think works really well. So I'm going to walk you through, this is going to be a four-part video, and I have it pretty planned out. I've done this already on a actual real production project, and just got that big change up live yesterday. So I'm eager and ready to share my experience, because I think this article is great. I think it's it's enough to figure it out. I was able to figure it out, but it doesn't necessarily have all the pieces. It's not necessarily a tutorial of like every step you have to do, and that's what I want to kind of solve here. Is have something that people can really follow along, and also have some real sample code. And, reasons for that is, I think because this article is, what was the name of the company? Fabul, basically this like quiz app that's built in Flutter. They have a web version and native ones, and I'm sure they didn't want to show, actual code snippets from their real, put it up. But I'm planning on putting up, an actual Flutter project with everything you could need to do this. So what do they do here? So it's this, the main trick is this thing called base-href, and it's something you've probably seen in your Flutter projects in the index.html if you've ever deployed to web, and usually it's just set to an empty string or at least like a /. And what's magical about doing this, essentially adding in an href, is you can basically put all your, other than your index.html, you can put all your JavaScript that gets compiled, your assets, all that stuff can be in sort of a subfolder that you can version, meaning based on your build number, like 1.2.3, you can have that all that stuff in there. And then when you put out 1.2.4, you have another folder for that. And what is great about this now is the way caching works. If the URL is different, your browser goes, oh, that's something I've never seen before, I'm going to go grab it. And also, if you're doing caching on the cloud side, which is something you definitely should do, and we will be doing here, same kind of thing applies. Like Cloudflare will, cache something, and if you make a change to one file in there, it's still going to change. So basically, the way this is going to work is every time we put a new build out, we're essentially not going to replace files, but actually make completely new ones in a new folder. And we can think of each build as an immutable build package, meaning everything in that folder, if we ever want to make another change, we don't ever replace the stuff in there. We're now actually incrementing the build number and putting it in there. And then we can actually set our cache to be super aggressive. Like we can say a 1-year cache, this is immutable. It's never going to change because anything in that folder won't change. We'll be putting a new one out. So let's talk about that and how we can do that very shortly. Now there is some stuff in here about doing deferred loading, which we're not going to cover in this series. It's sort of a separate topic, but it works well with this approach. There's just some stuff you might have to do. So definitely, and I'll have a link to this article in the description. Definitely, read that through if you're doing anything with deferred. Basically, what deferred loading is, you might have like a heavy task, and this is something that's not web specific. It works in Flutter in general, but it's definitely, I think, like probably gives you the biggest like change in web, because what it allows you to do is kind of break up your heavy tasks and maybe have like some cryptography function in your app that isn't needed until you get really far into, deep into it and you've already made an account, for example. You can essentially split that off as a deferred piece of code, and all that cryptography code that might be megabytes large doesn't actually get downloaded in the main bundle. Instead, it gets downloaded kind of upon request. So that's something you could do, and in my case, I don't really have a need for that for this application, so I'm not even going to cover that. So yeah, the base-href thing we've talked about. Now, there's some sort of code snippets in here that work fine, such as pulling essentially the version number from this, and some stuff for like, essentially how you do your build properly and move things around and all that kind of stuff. So here's an example of like, the base-href with the / before, but then it's changing to the build number here with actually the version number and the real build number there. And that's how they chose to do it. We're not going to worry about this part of it. We're just going to be, doing this here. So yeah, that's kind of what they're doing here. And then the idea is, like I said, you kind of have these different folders for all the different things, et cetera, et cetera. And then our root file, so our index.html, and actually you'll see our version.json, we are going to also have that above that folder. So it won't be within those like 0.1, 00, whatever files. And these will be the two files that are mutable, so they will change. And we'll make sure that when we set up caching on it, that we'll tell Cloudflare, hey, always like make this like a file that never gets cached. And we're also going to do something in our build process that actually purges purges the cache of Cloudflare for those two files when we do a successful deploy. Because the idea is here, if this isn't, if the index.html is always like a live breathing asset that when someone requests it, we get it live and up to date, that's the one that points to, that folder, right? So as long as we're saying like, as long as you have the most updated one of this, it'll be pointing to the most updated version of the code. And because that code is in a folder that likely someone hasn't downloaded before because they're just coming now, it won't be cached. And what's great is a returning user, later that day, the next day, even a week later, if you haven't done a deploy, they'll still have the most recent version of your app cached if this hasn't updated. So it kind of, works on both sides really well, I think. And then lastly, and this will be something in part of part 4, we will set something up like this where we can actually notify our users with just a simple like pop-up when a new version has come out. And I got that working too on my my real web app yesterday. I'm so excited to get to that part too. So yeah, let's just talk through quickly, kind of like the structure of this short course, I don't know, a course, lesson, whatever. So in the first part, we're just going to talk about and actually do the version build and show you how to set that up. In part 2, we're going to actually set up a deployment strategy. So we're going to use an S3 bucket, so Amazon S3, to actually host our Flutter web app. And we're going to be using Cloudflare to do the DNS and deal with the caching and all that kind of stuff. So we'll be doing that in part 2. Part 3 is going to be really fun because we're actually going to set up automatic deployments. Basically, we're going to set up a GitHub action that when we push to our staging branch or even our main branch, merge there or whatever, anytime the code changes there, it's actually going to run all this stuff in the background and do our Flutter build in the cloud, which for me is super handy because, I want that stuff to happen in the cloud. I want to be able to just like merge, make sure it's good. And all that stuff uses, cloud resources to do it instead of, instead of, using my own computer, because I need to, do some other work now. I've finished that. I just want to deploy kind of the background. I'll come check on it in a minute, but I want that to happen somewhere else and not use up my, RAM and CPU that, is hard to come by right now. Yeah, so that's part 3. And then, yeah, part 4, we're going to do 2 things. I'm going to show you how to use, there's a small caveat with this. If you're using like hash fragment URLs, this is going to be really easy. And just kind of works out of the box. However, there's a small issue if you want to use path-based URL, so meaning there's no hashtag in the URL. And in part 4, I'll show you how can we actually do that, because I think that's a nice thing to do is not have that hash bang there. It just requires a little bit of a hack, and we'll do that. And we're going to set up the auto-updating notification that just make sure if someone's on your on your app right now and you have an updated version, that you just can prompt them to refresh, and we'll do that. So that'll be part 4. Okay, so let's figure this out. Let's write some code. I'm gonna just boot up a basic Flutter app, and we'll go from there. All right. I have this is just a Flutter create. I called it Flutter Web Deploy. It's a really great name. And done nothing here. We're just gonna, we're just gonna for now use the counter app, because this is not about, this will work with any app that at least, you can build to web. Obviously, like, you can't just take any Flutter app that has non-web plugins and make it work. But assuming you can normally, deploy to web, this will work with any, Flutter project. Okay, so I have this open, and I do want to quickly show you this in action. So I'm just going to show you that this is a project of mine, and it's a Flutter web app. So we're going to look at the source of this, and you're going to see here that the base-href is 4.6.11, which actually just aligns nicely with, if you can see it here, the version code here. And if we actually look at the S3 bucket that this is on, and this will be in this folder here, we'll actually see, because I've deployed, just to test and everything quite a few times since this new setup yesterday, we're actually going to see there's different folders here. So this is kind of the structure of what is hosting our application. It is, the files are being served from an S3 bucket, kind of. That's where they're being stored. Ultimately, Cloudflare is going to take over and serve those things for us. We'll see later on. But you can see the different folders here. So because the index.html is saying, hey, the base-href is 4611, it means anytime we're including like a relative path, so like flutter bootstrap.js, which is, the main thing. There's some other stuff too. But basically, this file is not found in the root directory. It's actually found in that 4.6.11, and you'll see in here, here's all the, the files. And this would be the normal, if you just did a Flutter build, this is what you would normally see, except you would still have this index.html here, and the version.json would also be in that folder. So how do we, make that work? So we're going to go here, and what we're going to do is we're going to start just in this one, although we will be eventually in part 3 doing this with GitHub Actions to do it kind of automated. We're just going to build a simple sh script here. So we're just going to call this like deploy.sh, and I'm going to put it in there. Now with an sh script, a shell script basically, we do have to remember to chmod it. We basically have to say this is a file that you're allowed to execute. And to do that, we do chmod plus x is one way, probably the easiest way to do it. And then just type in deploy.sh. And now it's actually an executable, meaning I can just go deploy.sh and it will run whatever's in here. So you can think of a shell script, and there's other ways you could do this. You could, in theory, do this with a make file, which is pretty similar. You could do this, probably a lot of different ways. But you can think of a shell script as if it's like a template that you're going to run that executes a bunch of terminal commands. So, we could essentially put anything in a shell script like that you could do, like pwd, for instance. And if I actually run deploy, it's actually going to do the, print the working directory. That's what pwd means. And we will get that. So I'm sure you've seen these before. Maybe not. But that's basically what a shell script is. We can put different commands in it, and everything is good. So what we want to do is, first of all, let's just do a Flutter build web, and we're going to do release. This is usually like the standard, sort of way that you would do it. And let's just look at what happens in its most basic form. And if you have a Flutter web app right now, I'm sure you've done this before. We are compiling. We are compiling. Okay, so you'll see now we have a build folder that just popped up, and inside build there's just one web. Now, of course, if you were building an iOS version, Android, you would have the different ones in here, but we only care about web for this. And you'll see in here we have that sort of same thing. We have the flutter.js, the bootstrap, the service worker, the index.html, which is going to look similar to our web index.html. This is the one we would edit. This is the one in the build. One main difference is, look, in the one that we edit, that we work with, it's got this sort of placeholder thing here, Flutter base-href. Okay, cool. And if you go to the one that got built, it actually put in a slash there. So replace that. It does a few other things too, like putting this in. It gets rid of some comments and stuff like that, and so on and so forth. But we just got to keep that in mind. That's basically what's happening. And this is what we would deploy, right? We would essentially, if it was Firebase, we would set our Firebase config to be like use the build web. If it was GitHub Pages, similar kind of thing. Various places that you could obviously host this. And we just put this whole thing up. And because it has an index.html and it knows to get the Flutter bootstrap, it'll just usually work. All right. But we don't want to do that. We don't want to use the normal thing. We want to do things a little bit differently. So the first thing in our sh script that I like to do is I want to just to make sure everything's clean and good, I like to just remove my build folder. Now you could do remove build/web. Let's actually just do that, just so that we're not removing our iOS builds and stuff, even though totally safe to do that anytime, because you can just always rebuild, right? They're not files that you'd be version controlling or anything like that. And in fact, if I just init this as a Git repository, we'll see that the build folder is gray, meaning this isn't version control, because our git ignore says, hey, don't do that. Okay, so we want to do that first as our first step. Just it's kind of like a way of doing, I think in the article they do a Flutter clean first, which Flutter clean does this along with other things. This is just a way to kind of like clean up and make sure that you don't have assets from a previous build that you no longer need. So we're gonna do that first. Then if you are using something like FVM, which for this we're not going to use, you would probably in this point do like FVM use and then whatever version of Flutter you want to use, but we're just going to work with it this way. Then we want to run our Flutter build web release, just like we did before. And here's the magic. We want to do base-href. And we're going to just put a slash here, and let's actually create a variable just so we can kind of change it in one spot. We're just going to go export release, and we're just going to make it like a random number, let's just do 0.0.0. Sure. So this is like a variable in a shell script, and then we can actually use this in code by putting a $sign in front of it. And now this is, going to get put in here. It's just a variable, but it's, probably different than variables you're used to in Dart. Okay, and then, we could do a whole bunch of other things here, like any Dart defines, any, sort of stuff that you'd want to do to have your script, your build work. But let's go and do that, and let's just see what happens when we run our shell script now. So I want to just run that deploy again. And we'll see actually the build folder's gone now, and now it's coming back. And the good thing is this build should be faster because we actually haven't changed any Dart code. So hopefully you won't have to listen to me ramble on too much. But you'll see it's kind of like, putting in the normal, these are just like the runtime for Flutter and the bootstrapper and stuff. And it copied over our index and it pulled in the canvas kit, sort of stuff. And then it actually builds the app, which is basically the main.dart. And if we look at the version.json, we're going to see in here, okay, version 1.0.0, that came from our pub spec, various sort of things. But now we have this. The only main difference here, nothing, this won't work yet because we have to do a few other things, but if we go to our index.html, we're actually going to see the base-href is /0.0.0/. Okay, cool. We're, partway there. Now, the next thing we're going to want to do is, and you could do this in various ways, but this is the way I'm going to do it. We're going to make a new directory. We're going to do -p, and that will basically mean it will create, the folder if it doesn't exist, like the sort of parent folder. So we're going to go build. So within our build, we're going to make something called web output just to, put the files where we want. And we'll still use this release variable here. So $release. So we're going to make that directory. So it's basically going to make something right beside web called web output. And what I'm going to do just temporarily is comment these out just so we can run this without having to do a full Flutter build again. And I can kind of show you what what goes along the way. So let's actually run this now. And we should just see, look, web output got made and 0.0.0 made. Awesome. The next thing I want to do, I want to basically move the build/web/star. So everything that's inside build.web/star, I want to move to build/web output/release. Yeah, let's just do that. Actually, yeah, let's do the other parts too. And I'll just copy these ones because they're pretty basic, but I'll walk you through them. The next thing we want to do is actually move that index.html, so the one that is inside here, but is obviously going to be moved here during this previous step. We're going to move it back one directory. So it's not going to be in the 0.0. It's basically just going to be right in the web output index.html. And we want to do the same with the version. So let's run this script again. And we'll see now everything got moved here. Okay, cool, into 0.0.0. And then the index got moved. We still keep the version. You'll see it's being copied, just because it's nice to have that there too. But there's a reason, and in part 4, you'll see there's a reason we want this here for something. And we'll leave that as a surprise for now. But now, yeah, we have this, and it's saying, hey, here's the base-href, cool, Okay, so that's kind of, the main stuff. I'm going to put these back in now, just so we don't forget. And what is next? Let's test this out. So let's actually go, actually, no, we'll keep this. What we can do, and there's many ways to do this, but we're going to go into our build folder, cd build, and the web output folder. And we're going to just, serve something from here. So there's a few different ways you can serve. And if you have NPM installed, you can install something called HTTP server. And to do that, it would just be npm install -g HTTP server, HTTP-server. And that just makes a node. There's a node module called HTTP server. Once you have that installed, and the G just means do it globally. It's not, part of a JavaScript package, like make this available globally. I can run this in a folder with a period. So I'm saying HTTP server serve from this spot, period, meaning, right here. And what it will do is it'll actually serve our, web application. And remember, Flutter Web App is just, it's pretty basic web application. So we're actually seeing in here, it's booting up and everything. And look, we have our Flutter demo working, which is kind of cool. And so now, look, we have our 0.0.0. If we click this, you're actually going to see that that it goes to the 0.0.0 folder because the index.html's base-href knows where to look for that. So that's cool because now if we, for instance, wanted to change to, we made some changes to our code and we want to do this, it'll actually, put it into the 0.0.1 and everything will be good. So right now, some of you, this might make sense. It's like, okay, cool. It's kind of working. That's great. If it doesn't make sense yet, it probably will make more sense when we actually get this up on running on a server, right? Because then we can actually test, it going up and see where the files go on Amazon. And I can really show you like, hey, stuff is, not being cached. It's really great. But yeah, this was the first step, just getting this working. And in the next one, we are, let me just look at my notes again to make sure I know what we're doing next. In part 2, yeah, we're going to set up an S3 bucket. We are going to set up Cloudflare rather, and get this to actually deploy somewhere, which, is really the topic here. Running this locally isn't really helpful. We want this running so users can visit it and get the most up-to-date version. So yeah, stay tuned for the next one. It'll be coming soon, and we will actually, just continue doing what we're doing. And I'm excited about this series. I think this is a really cool topic, and I just want to do a shout out again to our good friend Lucas, who pointed out this approach after many R&Ds. And yeah, again, the article is in the description, so give it a read. And hopefully this is a nice companion to that article for people that prefer, video based sort of tutorials. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.